All right, let's jump to these umpire issues that are continuing. If you're watching, you can join us the discussion in the chat. All chat and discussion is welcome. So you guys are all you all can join us here. So two big umpire issues to discuss this week. We'll start with the first one where the umpire just randomly tosses anyone from the Marlins dugout. He can't put a face or a name to who he's throwing out. Just turns to the dugout, makes the throw out sign, and Schumacher comes out and goes, "Well, who are you throwing out? Who are you throwing out?" And he goes, "I don't know, pick a player." He goes, "Pick a player? Are you kidding me?" And I don't even know who ended up. Was it the bench coach that ended up taking the ejection?
Yeah. Eventually, the crew chief came over and said, "No, it should be the bench coach." He was walking up there. He's got to go. But it was hilarious to watch these umpires. Literally Skip Schumacher, like he became an owl, just kept asking who, and they had no idea. They just kept pointing around the dugout. I don't know, whoever said something.
Yeah, and the bench coach was like clapping, like, "Hey, let's just get the game moving. Like we're done. Like let's just." And then that's when the umpire made the ejection sign, and it was just like, what are we doing as umpires? Like, don't just be throwing people out willy nilly here. This is out of control. Like, we have enough issues with the ABS and balls and strikes and all that stuff. We don't just need to be turned into a dugout and throwing out a random person on the team when you don't know who said it. What does the MLB do here?
What they always do.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, to your question there, it says, has there been an increase, or are we just paying closer attention? I think a little bit of both. I think we're probably just paying closer attention. I think we just have such easier access to all of it. Like, I'm sure we'll talk about the one in a second, that interference that ended the White Sox-Orioles game, right in the bottom of the ninth. Dude, I mean, that happened 4 minutes later. I mean, we were talking about it in our group chat, because you go through any social media, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, like whatever. I mean, it's there, and like you see it, and it's like it allows for like immediate discourse. And this is like new to the baseball world. This is not something that has been happening for a while. 5 years ago, if something like that happened, if you were not watching the game, you would have had to have seen it on like MLB Network, or something along those lines, where it probably would have taken days for you to see it. You would have had to see it through like the MLB account, which they wouldn't have been posting it everywhere, because I don't think they're very proud of the way that game ended. So I think, has there been an increase? Probably a little bit, probably not as much as we think, but we just have such access to it. Like, it's crazy. I mean, dude, there's Twitter accounts that you follow, or that I follow. It's called The Ump Show. And like, quite literally, the only posts and stuff on this account is just bad calls by the umpires. It runs nonstop. So just, that's an example. Like, it's just so much easier to see the mistakes when they're made, and they're just so much more public, which I think probably adds to the umpires. If you think they're not feeling it, then you're crazy. Right. Like, these guys are going into every game knowing that every single call they make, whether it's a ball strike call in the first inning, a check swing in the third, is going to get scrutinized, completely, absolutely scrutinized. And they've kind of brought that on themselves as a group, the umpires. I mean, it's not like it's exactly been great for the past few years, but I definitely think they're feeling it, which is why I think some of these guys have such quick triggers when it comes to just tossing guys. Like, I'm not, you're out. I don't feel like talking about it. I'm done with it, which is a whole nother discussion. Whether or not we want to get involved in that, I don't know, but it's tough. It's tough. I mean, even, I was at the Mets game on Saturday afternoon, and Buckner was behind the plate, and
oh god,
I don't think it was the worst, but I don't think it was the best. I mean, it was pretty lenient with that outside corner against right-handed batters. I mean, my goodness, JD Martinez struck out on a slider that came nowhere close. I mean, it never even came close to hugging the outside corner. And he rings him up, and JD doesn't really do much. Kind of gives his 2 cents, and then Mendoza comes out, he gives his 2 cents, and I'm sitting there going, one of these guys is about to get tossed. I mean, just for simply stating their opinions, they're about to get tossed. They didn't, But anytime you have any sort of disagreement, and Bryce Harper in the first inning, was that on Friday?
Yep.
Or was that Saturday too? It was beginning of the weekend,
early.
Friday or Saturday.
Yep.
First inning.
Yeah.
And he was upset on the strike 2 call. So he was upset on the strike 2 call. He ends up striking out to end the inning, right? Players are coming off the field. He drops the helmet, as he's waiting for his glove and all that stuff. He's not barking at him. I'm sure he voices his displeasure. Hooked. First inning.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Unless he said the magic word, which I can't imagine he did, because looking at the clip, he didn't look all that animated.
No.
So
for his league leading or current player leading 21st ejection, second place 6. So
wow,
Bryce, yeah.
Well, I'll never forget Bryce Harper basically charging on the third baseline and Angel Hernandez on that check swing.
So good.
That was a classic. But I think
at least he got his money's worth on the ejection on that one.
Oh, he absolutely did.
At least you earned it. You get your money's worth.
Yeah. Well, it's so, Bryce Harper gets tossed after saying a few things, and he wasn't really that animated. Aaron Judge, a week before that, gets thrown out for literally just saying like 4 words. You've got Aaron Boone getting thrown out for what a fan said. You got Skip Schumacher trying to figure out who they threw out on his bench. These umpires, they have a quick trigger. They want to throw somebody out. They want to show they're in control, and it's like completely out of hand with what they're doing. But to the original question of, are we seeing more bad calls? I think we are seeing some more bad calls, but I saw a clip the other day of Livan Hernandez pitching against the Braves, and he had 3 strikeouts in the first 2 innings on pitches that were like 5-6 inches off the plate, easily off the plate. Like there's no K zone back in the 90s, but if there was, these would have been way off the plate. Like there's always a level of, and we've always said it, we don't expect the umpires to be 100%. There's going to be a level of missing balls and strikes. My problem is you can't question these guys. You can't ask a question. You can't talk to them. You just get thrown out. And they rather than having a conversation and trying to explain things or trying to even listen to the guys, they just give them the heave-ho too quick. So are we seeing more? Probably. But I think these umpires are also feeling a lot of pressure. And I will say, sadly enough, many of these umpires that we're having trouble with now, they sucked back in the 90s. Like some of these guys were there in the mid to late 90s. They've been around that long. They weren't good then. They're not good now. Like we're just continuing to take the same problems. And as these guys get older and more disgruntled and all this stuff, I think they care less, and they're not seeing pitches. I shared a video on the Facebook page the other day. An umpire missed 18 calls in a single game, 15 of them winning against the Giants. They were all breaking pitches. Almost all of them were breaking pitches, and some of them were never even over the plate. They started off the plate, finished off the plate. Like these guys, I don't think can read some of these pitches, and because of that, they can't call them. So I don't know if it's an eye thing, if it's just the way the game moves, the way the pitches move, but there's clearly a disconnect in what these umpires are able to read and register and actually call. There's something that's not working. But having guys that have been umpires for 33 years isn't helping.
Yeah, I agree. To go to your point, Sean, about like the scrutiny that they're under, I think that's got to be the reason for the quick triggers, right? They're feeling all this pressure. When they get off the field, they hear it. When they get on the field, they hear it. And when they're on the field, they can control what they hear. And by just turning to a dugout and giving the heave-ho, like they're trying to control that. So, I mean, I definitely agree with that. But, yeah, I agree with both of you. There has been an increase. We are paying closer to attention to it. We had always talked about MLB not marketing their game and not having eyeballs on their game. And now all the eyeballs are on, and now they're like just all attacking the umpires now. I mean, it's tough, but
unfortunately, it's the wrong kind of attention. It's attention, but it's the wrong kind.
Right. All right. So let's get right into this interference call that ended the Orioles-White Sox game. So we got first and second, 1 out, bottom of the 9th, and we get an infield fly. So the batter's automatically out. Gunnar comes in, makes contact with Andrew Vaughn. Not much contact, like a shoulder brush on the way in. Gunnar gets in. He's camped underneath it for 4-5 seconds. I mean, camped. Makes the play. Second base umpire calls interference. Game over. Now, I got nothing on this one.
I mean, Major League Baseball came out the next day and said it shouldn't have been called. So like the league came out and was like, yeah, that shouldn't have been called. Like for me, it was odd that you're going to end a game like that. Like I don't even think Gunnar knew that it was being called when he caught it, because he caught it, right? And he's looking to get it to the pitcher because obviously the batter's out, but it's a live ball in a sense, right? Like runners can advance if they choose to. So it's like, it's a live ball in that particular sense. He catches it. He's looking to give it to the pitcher. And then he starts looking around being like, wait, what? As he's tracking the pop-up and he brushes shoulders with Vaughn, he's not calling for it.
No.
Like, he's not looking around being like, oh, I got touched. That should be interference. I don't even think he knows that he got touched. Like, it was it was crazy. I don't know, man. Like, I'm not going to pretend to be some sort of like legal aficionado with the rule book. Like, I'm sure that it says in the rule book that it is the runner's responsibility to get out of the way of the fielder trying to make a play on the ball and all that stuff. I get it. But like, Vaughn was looking at the ball and he's simply just trying to step his way back to the bag. Gunner's looking at the ball and he even senses Vaughn a little bit because kind of he goes around him.
Yeah.
And maybe that doesn't matter, the fact that he goes around and the fact that he can't make a point A to point B. I don't know. That's no way to end the game.
No.
It's just not a way to end the game. It had no impact on the play whatsoever. Now, if he bumped him and he couldn't get there and that ball hits the ground and takes a crazy kick, whatever, and because totally get it. Totally get it. The fielder should have had an opportunity. He didn't. That's interference. Like, this had no impact whatsoever.
No. And the fact that the umpires didn't get together and talk it out. Like, they're just like, yeah, we're going home. That's the game. That, like, you got to get that right at that stage in the game. You got the tying run coming up in the batter's box, or the go-ahead run.
Right.
You had the winning run.
Yeah,
yeah.
Right.
The tying runs on first base, and you just end the game like that. It's tough, man. And like you said, like, I'm not an umpire expert, but that one, I mean, I couldn't have called interference there to end the game there. Like,
well,
there was nothing there.
Yeah, I just think sometimes you just got to let logic kind of take over.
Whoa. Easy now.
I'm just saying that. I don't think, like, if you're interpreting like, there are rules that are difficult to interpret, which is why you have kind of like complicatedly written rules in the rule book. And these umpires, get paid a lot of money in whatever sport. The officials, get paid well and they're expected to be experts on the rule book. But I think sometimes you just have to let logic take over, and I think everybody that was in that stadium, players included, everybody watching on TV, like, I don't think there was really one person other than the second base umpire that called it. I don't think one person was looking at that being like, did he get in his way? That might be interference on the runner. Like, I don't think a single person said that in that stadium except for the umpire. I don't think Orioles players, Orioles coaches, like,
the other umpires,
and that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, I just think, like, that's just not logical.
I agree.
No, and so I put a link in the chat to the ESPN story that kind of covers it and shows a clip of it. But the way I heard it explained is that it's the base runner's job to move out of the way for the runner to play the ball, which
the fielder.
For the fielder to move out to be able to play the ball. So the runner's got to be able to clear and leave in space. The problem is you've got a pop fly, so you've got Vaughn turns to see it, and he's actually working his way back to second base, which he's allowed to do. Gunnar Henderson is shifted, playing almost behind second base, and then comes in to make the catch, and they cross paths, and he goes and makes the catch. But in theory, the runner is attempting to return to the base, not attempting to get in the way. Henderson was not impacted in a way where he couldn't make the catch. To your point, Sean, an umpire should see that and say, well, really, no harm, no foul. The runner's doing what he's supposed to do. He can't account for exactly where the guy's playing at every point, at every minute, what line he's going to take at the ball. But the runner did what he had to do. The fielder did what he had to do. It was an infield fly, so the catch doesn't even matter. Like, everything here's fine. Like, there's no reason to make a call in a situation that doesn't necessarily justify that call. If the game is going to be influenced because you don't make the call, then I can understand it. But the outcome wasn't changed by not making the call or by not making a call. because the ball was caught anyways. The play finished the way it should have. So we're
And
creating something we don't need to in that case.
yeah, and it would have been entirely different too if Vaughn starts taking an ass backwards route back to second base and gets in the way. Fine. Like, what are you doing?
For sure.
What are you doing 6 feet behind the bag? That I get. Or like, what are you doing on the infield grass going back to second base? But he wasn't. He was 3-4 steps away from the base. The ball gets up in the air. You watch it. The first thing he does is look up where the ball is, and he starts to make his way back to the base.
Yep.
And let's just put it this way. If that interference call wasn't made and everything else plays out the way that it was, not a single player, coach, front office person in Baltimore would have gone to the league after the game being like, hey, that should have been interference. Let's take another look at that. Why didn't they call that? Not a single person would have done that.
No.
So to me, like, that's where it's like, and I'm sure people are going to come at me being like, well, the rules are the rules, and fans don't call. And I get that fans don't call the plays. Like, I get that, but I'm saying, like, when 99.9% of people are using their brains and being like, that's not an interference call, then it's likely not an interference call.
Right, and like you said, if the ball drops in the infield after a brush or contact is made, then it's different.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Even on an infield fly, if that ball falls, gunner can't get to it, and you've made contact with a runner, then it's interference. We were camped underneath this thing for 4 or 5 seconds. We had plenty of time to make the catch. It's just not interference in my eyes. It's just crazy.
No, it's the umpires injecting themselves into a situation and creating a situation they didn't need to. And for the league to actually come out and say that shouldn't be called, that's like a massive step for the league. They never do that. They never make a statement about a call like that, which just tells you how bad it was.
Yeah, and I don't even know if there was any like malice on the part of the umpire. Like, I don't think that they're trying to inject themselves to be like, this is my game, like, I'm going to make the call. But I think, like, you just add into what we talked about a few minutes ago. I think they're feeling such pressure and such scrutiny that they feel like every call they make has to be the right one. Because if they don't, so now they're kind of, their feathers are up and they're looking at like, okay, every play I have to make sure I call it absolutely perfect. So they're looking for things like this because in their heads, they're like, I don't want to get bashed. Umpires in general are just getting bashed for everything. Like, so they're looking, they're like, their antennas up, and it's like, we got to look for every little minor thing. It's like, dude, that's not what people care about. People just want you to be consistent behind the plate, right? They want you to be consistent when you're calling box or not box. Like, I mean, how many box have we seen this year? Like, what are we talking about? And then we see some that, like, how do they not call that? Right? Like, that's the consistency that the fans are looking for. It's not these, like, that play that they called that interference on, you're not going to see that for the rest of the year.
No.
A play like that is not going to happen for the rest of the year.
No.
Like, why are we so gung-ho on making that call when we can't even get, like, the basic consistency down? And that's kind of the frustrating part when you're watching these games.
Yeah, I'm 1,000% with you.